to order meeting number 13 of the Standing Committee on Natural Resources. I'd like to start by saying I appreciate Mr. Lloyd's enthusiasm. It's shared amongst all of the members in this committee, I can assure you, regardless of what province you're from. To our witnesses, thank you for coming. I'm going to do some formal introductions of you and process in a moment, but if you don't mind bearing with me and the committee for a few minutes, we have some outstanding matters from our last meeting that I would like to deal with. Members, I'm referring to Mr. McLean's motion and Mr. Simard's proposed amendment and Mr. Lloyd's objection to the amendment. So on Friday, as everybody will recall, we postponed this issue to be dealt with this morning because we didn't have the documents in front of us, and there were some issues with respect to translation. By now, everybody should have received a copy of Mr. Simard's proposed amendment in both official languages. Hopefully you have that in front of you. I've had a look at it. I've had a further look at Mr. McLean's motion. I've given consideration to Mr. Lloyd's objection. I've had a look at rules of procedure. Mr. Lloyd, I'm going to rule that the proposed amendment is acceptable and appropriate. So that being the case, barring any objection to that, what I propose to do is we can continue our debate on the amendment. And then once we have disposed of the amendment by way of vote, we can continue our discussion on Mr. McLean's motion, either as amended or as it currently stands. So that's my plan. Mr. Lloyd, I see you have your hand up, as does Mr. McLean now. Okay.
I'll defer to Mr. McLean, but I'd like to have an opportunity to respond right after him. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. McLean.
Mr. Chair, I was wondering if this would be better dealt with if we actually set aside 15 minutes at the end of the meeting for this matter and heard the witnesses for an hour and 3/4 and then dealt with this at the end. Would that be a more appropriate way to get through our agenda today, as long as it's clearly defined?
Yeah, and Mr. McLean, thank you for that. I'm more than happy to proceed in that fashion. I just didn't want you or any of your colleagues to think that I had decided to not deal with the issue as I committed to doing on Friday. That's all. So thank you for proposing that. And assuming there's no objections from any of the members, we can just jump into the meeting. Okay, seeing none, I see thumbs up and heads nodding. That's good. Okay, so to our witnesses, I would just like to say welcome. Thank you. This is our second meeting on a very important study dealing with critical minerals and supply chains in Canada. We're very grateful for you taking the time to be here today. Just some of the rules of the road. We are conducting this meeting, by Zoom, which unfortunately carries with it some challenges. So what I ask is people to wait until others are finished speaking before you take your turn to speak, so that the interpreters and members can clearly understand everything that's being said. The process will be each group will be given up to 5 minutes to make an oral presentation, following which the floor will be open to questions from the members. You are welcome to and encouraged to speak in either official language. You have headsets provided for you. On your screen, you should see a little symbol at the bottom, which provides for translation. If you're having any troubles with that regard, please speak up and let me know, and we will take steps to rectify it. Okay, so as I said, 5 minutes each. I would like to welcome all of our witnesses. We have Avalon Advanced Materials, Inc., the Battery Metals Association of Canada, Benchmark Mineral Intelligence, Eagle Graphite Corporation, and the Yukon Chamber of Mines. Madam Clerk, do we have everybody present now?
We are still waiting for our last witness, the Yukon Chamber of Mines. Okay. I will monitor when Mr. Hartland joins. We may need to do a little quick test with him, depending on how his headset is. But in the meantime, as he is last on the list, we can proceed.
Okay, thank you. So perhaps you could just give me a little nudge when he arrives, and we can deal with it at the time. So let's get started. Mr. Bibar from Avalon Advanced Materials. Sir, you have the floor for up to 5 minutes. And if as I should forewarn everybody that one of my jobs, as unpleasant as it is I'm the chief interrupter. So if people are going beyond the time allocated, I have to stop you. And sometimes that occurs in mid-sentence. I try to avoid it, but try to be conscious of the time. So thank you. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much for the invitation to be a witness here today. A little bit of background info on myself. I'm a geologist. I've been involved in mineral exploration and development in northern Canada for 45 years now. And for the last 26 years, I have been president and CEO of Avalon. And for most of those 25 years, we have been looking at opportunities to start these critical minerals supply chains in Canada, notably lithium, rare earths, and some other ones, cesium, tantalum, tin, indium, and others. And it's been very challenging. It's not simple getting these non-traditional commodities started into production. But now there is certainly the interest, so we're delighted to see that new opportunity is there. And one of the opportunities I'm particularly excited about is that this is going to create enormous new economic development opportunities for Indigenous businesses and communities in the North. I have been an advocate for this for many, many years. And some of you who read the Globe and Mail may have seen that I got an opinion piece published 2 weeks ago in the Report on Business that was co-authored by my good friend, former National Chief Phil Fontaine, in which we pointed out how these new critical mineral supply chains offer a tremendous opportunity for active involvement by Indigenous communities in the North in building these new supply chains. So I'm keen to be able to create some positive examples on that myself. And with our lithium project, we're now at the stage of trying to get a lithium process refinery to make the battery material products from the mineral concentrates that are your feedstock at a location in Thunder Bay, Ontario, which we think is ideal because of its location with respect to existing transportation infrastructure and proximity to new markets emerging in Eastern Canada. And one part of the dialogue there is there's lots of interest in Thunder Bay in having that facility there, including with the Fort William First Nation. They are keen to partner with us to work with us on getting this refinery established on their land, and at the same time create many new opportunities for other First Nations to begin to create the supply of the lithium minerals as feed for that refinery going forward. And that will allow us to increase production over time because we know there's going to be an increase in demand over time. So that's our vision for getting that supply chain started in that sector. And the other thing I'd like to mention briefly is that there are many other circumstances where you can look at trying to recover these critical minerals from unconventional situations. You're going to hear about one from E3 Metals later, I guess, on recovering lithium from the oil field brines in Alberta. But another very unappreciated opportunity is going back to historic mine wastes that are closed mine sites, may have been developed decades ago to produce a traditional exchange traded commodity, but the resource may have had many other elements in it that had no value or interest decades ago. Minerals day. So many of these sites now offer opportunities to go back, create a new plan, reprocess the tailings, and extract critical minerals and fully remediate the long-term environmental liability while you do it. Lots of opportunities, including some for lithium. We've had a project in southwestern Nova Scotia, past producing tin mine called East Kemptville. Tin mines are not just tin deposits, there's lots of stuff in them, and including lithium, tin, indium, gallium, germanium, lots of potential important critical minerals there in the waste and the tailings that are new opportunities to recover them and remediate the site. But it's never easy to do. There's always issues in terms of access and managing the liabilities from the historic poor understanding of what sort of opportunities are available there now. Plus, there's a whole lot of innovative new technologies being created now to allow for more efficient extraction processes that just don't generate the waste that traditional mining operations used to do. All of those things are possible, and I'd love to be able to get some of these situations started, create a positive precedent, and show the rest of the world how we can provide real leadership on recovering these critical minerals from these non-traditional circumstances. Plus, I'm looking at one for rare earths in Northern Ontario now. We just disclosed last week. Really interesting opportunity to get the rare earth supply chain started quickly, easily, by just processing historic mine waste.
Thank you, Mr. Babar. I'm going to have to stop you there, but I appreciate your presentation. For you mentioned Thunder. Anytime anybody mentions Thunder Bay, my ears perk up because I was actually born in Thunder Bay, and Mr. Wilder is a member of this committee. His ancestors hail from Thunder Bay. In fact, my birth certificate actually says Fort William, which is more a reflection of my age than anything. But okay, so let's move on to the Battery Metals Association of Canada, and Ms. Lappin, you have 5 minutes.
Good morning, bonjour. My name is Liz Lappin, and I'm the president of the Battery Metals Association of Canada, or BMAC for short. In addition to BMAC, I also work for E3 Metals Corp, just recently mentioned by Mr. Bubar. We're working to develop a first of its kind lithium project in Alberta. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. Development of the battery metal sector, from mines to mobility, is essential to support the continued expansion and adoption of clean tech as the world transitions to a lower carbon future. Relative to the EU and Asia, Canadian battery metal supply chains are currently in their infancy. However, with surging demand for battery metals to feed the expanding EV supply chain, the market opportunity for Canada is growing. BMAC was formed to help develop a united industry voice. Through a collaborative approach, we're working to connect, align, and advance the industry so it can meet its full potential for Canada. Our community is predominantly Western Canada-based. However, our vision is pan-Canadian. This brief is divided into 3 sections outlining recommendations for the sector. The first area of focus is support for critical minerals project development. The World Bank and a host of forecasters anticipate greatly increased global demand for critical minerals in the years ahead. And while Canada has an abundance of resources, they have been slow to develop due to a variety of challenges. Examples include high volatility in emerging pricing, competition for capital against established critical minerals jurisdictions, the highly complex nature of battery metals production, and delays in regulatory and policy development. Canada needs to move swiftly to support the needs of our domestic economy. To support critical minerals development, BMAC recommends financial support for qualified domestic battery metals companies who are capable of demonstrating viable prospective projects, promoting exploration and identification of resources by amending the Income Tax Act to ensure lithium brine resources are eligible for flow-through shares, encouraging provinces to rapidly develop responsible yet industry-friendly mineral policy and regulations to accelerate critical mineral resource development, and promoting streamlined tenure and regulatory frameworks to incentivize responsible development. And finally, prioritizing innovation funding for industry cluster applications, which would incent Canadian collaborations and strengthen connections along the supply chain. Our second area of focus is investing in value-added manufacturing. To avoid simply being exporters of raw materials, Canada needs to further develop our domestic value-added industries across the country. Developing a complete made-in-Canada, end-to-end, coast-to-coast supply chain is key to ensuring that Canadians have access to the resources and products we need, including batteries for electric vehicles and energy storage. To do this, we recommend prioritizing investment in the battery component and cell manufacturing sector as part of Canada's Build Back Better strategy, developing policy and financial incentives to support Canadian industry and government to buy local, and finally, harnessing the purchasing power of government, public institutions, and publicly owned businesses to provide scale. Our third and final focus area is developing a cohesive strategy. To borrow an analogy from the arts, it is commonly said that in order to play a symphony, you need an orchestra. Today, what I hear are a variety of notes of music or even sometimes a few lines of music strung together. If the entire orchestra, including government, industry, academia, and stakeholders, can all get organized behind a conductor, or essentially an overarching strategy, we could play some pretty incredible music. A symphony, like art, can be transformational, and a successful build-out of this industry in Canada can also be transformational, but only if we can all get behind that strategy, acting as a system rather than individual actors or musicians just playing our own parts. Canada is on a cusp of a rare, once-in-a-generation opportunity to develop its critical mineral industry and compete in this major new market. The global pandemic in particular has laid bare shortcomings in Canada's ability to produce critical goods needed for our country. We do not wish to face similar circumstances in the resources, components, or products that will deliver a greener future to Canadians. And while it's true that Canada has fallen behind in this respect, we can still catch up, particularly as the sector continues to evolve to meet our own needs. BMAC believes that by acting swiftly, together, efficiently, and responsibly, we will realize the abundant opportunities before us. Thank you. Merci.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Right on time, too. Before we move on to Mr. Moore from Benchmark Minerals, I understand that Mr. Hartland has arrived, so perhaps we could do a quick sound check and I could just explain to Mr. Hartland what we're doing. Sir, if you're assuming you can hear me okay, each group or witness group that's here today is given up to 5 minutes to present, and then when all the groups are done, we're going to open the floor to questions. We started and we've heard from 2 witnesses so far, but and there will be 2 more, and then we'll reach you. But perhaps the clerk could do a quick sound check with you before we carry on.
Certainly. Hello, Mr. Hartland. My name's Hillary. I'm the clerk of the committee. If I could ask you to just say a sentence or 2, we just want to make sure that our interpreters are able to hear you. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Samson Hartland here, the Executive Director of the Yukon Chamber of Mines. Apologies for the late appearance.
Thank you, Mr. Hartland. Can I just ask you to move your microphone up a little bit closer, sort of between your nose and your mouth, and we'll try again. Thank you.
Test 1 2 1 2, Samson Hartland, Executive Director of the Yukon Chamber of Mines.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thanks, Mr. Hartland. Okay, so we'll move on then to Simon Moores from Benchmark Mineral Intelligence. You have the floor.
Morning, bonjour, and good afternoon from here in London, UK. We are in the midst of a global battery arms race where the world's major economies are building a base to the energy storage revolution. The lithium-ion battery is the platform technology to unlocking the vast potential that energy storage holds for our world through electric vehicles and stationary storage systems. This race to build global battery capacity has seen a number of mega factories or gigafactories in the pipeline go from 3 in 2015 to 192 today. That's 192. China and Europe have led this charge, but North America is just beginning its journey. The importance of these battery mega factories cannot be underestimated. They not only provide the necessary lithium-ion battery cells at scale and low cost to tap into this mega trend, but these supersized battery plants are becoming physical embodiments of a country's industrial and technological ambition. Due to significant investments made today, by 2030, China and Europe will hold the sway of this industrial power, accounting for 67% and 18% of the world's battery capacity, respectively. North America will presently hold just 12%, a fraction of what it needs today, and a number that's at odds with its global energy and automotive position. Access to low-cost lithium-ion batteries will be one of the factors in determining which economies come out on top in the race to decarbonize the world. However, this is not just a battery game, but one of supply chain dominance. And it's known to all of our Canadian customers and friends, this begins in the ground at mine level. While 25% of the cost of an electric vehicle is the lithium-ion battery, 80% of the cost of a battery is the minerals and metals and chemicals that go into it. So in the end, the fundamental limiting factor is access to quality raw materials and chemicals at a stable long-term price. While the world's governments and auto majors focus on building EVs and battery plants, a true leader is yet to emerge in building the supply chains to feed them. At Benchmark, we call this the great raw material disconnect between those making EVs and the miners and chemists building the specialty materials to go into them. Canada is a country built on understanding the importance of these supply chains. Your country has some of the richest resources of EV minerals and metals, such as lithium, nickel, cobalt, graphite, manganese, copper, and rare earths. And just as importantly, you have the people, the know-how, and the technology to be able to access these resources in a responsible economic way. As a result, Canada holds the potential to create the upstream blueprint for this global energy storage revolution. While the world looks one way to build EVs and battery cells, Canada should look the other way upstream to not only ensure the basic supply of raw materials for this revolution, but add the value, make the chemicals, the anodes, the cathodes, even maybe 100% Canadian lithium-ion batteries from mine to cell. This has been China's approach. China has built dominance in the supply chain through more than a decade of investments. Despite the common misnomer, only 23% of all battery raw materials are mined in China, but 80%, that's 80% of battery chemicals are refined there. Having huge midstream capacity ensures these key raw materials flow into China to be value added. It also translates into creating trillions of dollars of value in downstream industries. This is a game of raw material musical chairs, and with no country willing yet to take a leadership position, the music will stop, and with it, the electric cars and the energy storage systems needed to decarbonize the world will grind to a halt. Canada holds the ingredients to solve this problem. To make this happen, Canada needs to align policy, legislation, and funding at both federal and provincial level. The European Union recently invested 3 billion euros into the battery supply chain, which will spark 3 times the amount of private investment. The United States investing $20 billion into the semiconductor supply chain last year is also an apt example. The world's major economies are rapidly realizing that economic security is national security and that the lithium-ion battery supply chain is the battleground. I would like to thank the committee and Chairman James Maloney and Vice Chair Greg McLean for inviting me here to speak on this subject. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and we thank you. Okay, so moving on to Mr. Deeth. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. I deeply appreciate your inviting me to share some thoughts. When I accidentally bought a graphite mine 15 years ago, I had no idea just how lucky I was to have stumbled on our project. Here was a graphite quarry that was already built and permitted, had already produced graphite. The project was and is an environmental dream with no acid contamination to worry about, and not even any tailings because there is a market for all the material that isn't graphite. It has hydroelectric power for processing, and it's amenable to becoming an all-electric operation once haul vehicle technology advances far enough. The graphite itself is indispensable for a number of clean energy technologies, and it is the carbon that reduces carbon footprint. The project enjoys overwhelming community support, including support expressed by all political parties, provincial and federal. It is staffed by loyal and talented people who became experts by actually making graphite, producing some of the highest quality graphite in the world, and doing so on an unbelievably low budget. Before long, we successfully qualified as a supplier to some key customers, and all we had to do was scale up production capacity to meet their orders. On reflection, we had stumbled into no ordinary project, the one whose features are globally unique. Compared to all my peers who had also unintentionally purchased their own graphite mines, I was clearly the most fortunate of the bunch. However, I had no clue just how much pain we were in for trying to further develop this project. Natural graphite is the poster child for minerals dominated by China. And in the face of a near monopoly wielded by one of the most powerful governments in the world, no combination of attributes could convince prospective sources of capital to invest in required expansion. Supply chains around the world seemed mostly content with heavy reliance on a single nation. In the extreme case of natural graphite for lithium-ion batteries, fully 100% of the intermediate stage processing was and still is taking place in China. This positioning is intentional. China has been investing in electric vehicles since at least 2009 and openly seeks global dominance in the sector. Meanwhile, project financing circles generally approached green energy as an afterthought and viewed traditional fossil fuel projects as safer long-term bets. However, as noted by a number of your earlier witnesses, viewpoints have recently shifted rapidly and decisively. With GM and Ford, the latest to fully commit to EVs, the green energy debate is seemingly over, at least as far as transportation is concerned. The question is not if, but when the last fossil fuel car will roll off the line. At the same time, there is a renewed sense of urgency for secured, localized, and diversified supply chains across all industries, but especially those critical to defense and otherwise foundational to the economy. It has finally dawned on us and our allies collectively that some parts of the economy need a reliable underpinning of steady supply. Now that this tipping point has arrived, Canada has a choice of roles. We can choose to be base level raw material supplier. The minerals involved are poised for exponential demand growth, and projects like my own seem likely to be slammed with more customers than we can handle. In our case, this would mean selling our natural graphite for about $1 per kilogram based on current markets. If my hunch is correct, our economic friends and adversaries alike will gladly take all that we have to offer for that $1. Standing today, this is the limit of Canada's capabilities. Canada's other alternative is for us to invest heavily and with urgency in downstream manufacturing, nurturing a viable ecosystem of second and third stage processing capability, where currently there is a vacuum. For graphite, this means processing that $1 output into advanced products like battery anodes, valued at over $5 per kilogram. Most of us would prefer the latter role, but achieving it requires significantly increased commitment from all of us. Half measures will not buy us half an ecosystem. There are many good ideas as to the form these commitments might take, and I'm happy to be involved in that discussion, but there simply isn't enough time to list all the possibilities now. In any event, whatever we do must be bold and so compelling that end users and investors alike will find the effort credible enough that they will queue up to buy in. This is how we go from where we are now to a thriving ecosystem, and if we achieve this, it won't just be a happy accident. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Deeth. Okay, last to hear from is Mr. Hartland. Mr. Hartland, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to present this morning. Thank you, members, for making the time on such an important topic. Here in the Yukon, I represent the Yukon Chamber of Mines. We represent a membership of over 700 members, representing every facet of Yukon's mineral development industry. We have some of the best geology in the world and mineral occurrences, and are quite well renowned for that ever since the Klondike Gold Rush. However, now 100 years later, we know that the transformation and the need for our minerals are much, much different today than they were in yesteryear. We have some of the best geology, as mentioned, and with that, in the critical minerals area, we have active exploration projects related to nickel, cobalt, and the platinum group of metals. I think, I won't spend too much time talking to our potential. I think, that's the reason why we're here today, and people are very familiar with our place in the world global commodities market. But I think what I would spend a little bit of time about is speak to as to what some of the challenges or barriers might be to getting to some of those critical minerals that are so highly sought after and strategically important to the people on the line today. We know that some of the prevention of getting to some of these minerals are the fact that they're landlocked. And some of those investments were announced by the federal government 3 years ago related to the Yukon Resource Gateway project has seen very little spent to date in the way of being able to develop Yukon's highway and road network to be able to access key minerals and strategically get into the Tintina belt that would obviously unlock strategically a significant amount of minerals. Energy production is another significant barrier at this stage in time. Yukon energy is 99% renewable, so we have some of the most cleanest energy produced in the world. However, there's only a finite amount of it. Right now, we're at capacity, and there are issues related to trying to get us connected to the BC grid. It is something that was presented as part of pre-budget consultations. Connecting to the BC grid would be transformative for our industry and for our territory, both in the way of developing projects, but also developing communities. There is a very symbiotic relationship between the minerals in the ground and the people above it, and the people who are considered the caretakers of the land, and that's Yukon First Nations. Another key component to accessing the critical minerals that exist in the great geological occurrences in the Yukon is an early and effective and meaningful engagement with Yukon First Nations. There is a lot of discussion around what the permitting and regulatory regimes look like, and we're currently in the development of a mineral development strategy, which we hope will bring in renewed mineral development legislation that clarifies and incorporates some of the key tenets that are important to Yukon First Nations, but also to industry in the way of social and corporate and social responsibility. I'll sort of leave my comments at that and leave it open to questions. I know there will probably be some more pointed questions about Yukon's position and being able to supply some of these critical minerals, and I look forward to being able to answer those. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hartland. I don't ever get to say this, so I'm going to say we had 5 witnesses, all stayed within time, and I didn't interrupt. That's I take great pleasure in that, I should let you know. So we'll start our questions now. Mr. McLean, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for coming today and giving us such a good presentation on the sector and where we need to go with the sector. I'll start my questions with Benchmark Minerals, please. Simon Moores. Mr. Moores, you talked about the costs of the batteries. We talk about 80% of the costs being from the actual supply of the raw materials themselves. Can you talk a little about the supply and demand of those raw materials as we move into more of a battery-intensive transportation network going forward? That is the relationship to price and the relationship it's going to have on the actual cost of battery storage.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. The critical materials, the ones that are produced in the hundreds of thousands of tons, like lithium, cobalt, graphite, and then the subsequent anodes and cathodes after that, they will go through a very stressful 10 years. What I mean by that is it'll be extreme volatility. It will be moments of significant undersupply, and then moments of significant oversupply, and then continuous. And we've already experienced that in lithium over the last 4 years. But what's happening is the demand for these raw materials are growing at a pace that no one alive has seen. This is an order of magnitude over 10 years. It could be anywhere from 4x to 10x demand change within that time period, depending on the battery raw material that you're looking for. And I've spoken to the chiefs of big mining companies like Rio Tinto and Anglo American about this and asked them if they had seen it in base commodities that we're more familiar with, but not this growth curve, not at this pace. And simply what that means is a good sort of story in my head that I always take away is it takes 4 to 7 years to build a lithium mine, to build and fund a lithium mine, but it takes 18 months to build a battery plant. So you can instantly see the problem with how the supply chain is going to build out, and that leads to the volatility that I mentioned at the start.
So maybe if we talk about either lithium or cobalt and its pricing today versus its pricing in, let's say, 5 years, when we have, by optimistic accounts, 10 times as many electric vehicles on the road in North America. Tell me what the pricing chart would look like.
Yeah, so pricing is simply a function of supply and demand. It doesn't matter if the market's 10 times the size in the future or if it's the size now. If lithium, for example, is going through a period of a shortage right now, so the price is going up. The last 4 years, when EV demand increased 30% for lithium, the price was coming down at that time. But what happens when you've got lithium's price staying down, and same for cobalt? If it stays too low for too long, you just don't get investments in new mines. There's always an incentive price to bring on new supply. And as a result, at the moment, because it's left to the capital markets, you're not getting the money for those new mines. And that's really where there could be a role for government to play and underpin this.
Do you see there being a choke point at some point in the near future?
Yeah, we're hitting the wall very soon. Lithium price is going up, cobalt's price is going up as we speak this year. I think we're 18 months away maximum from hitting the wall of demand's growing as you see the automakers. There's no investment in the raw materials, or if they put the money in the ground now, you'll probably see it in 4 years' time. So we're about to hit that wall, and you will just see the headlines over the next 18 months, and that's just the start.
I have another question for you as far as you have to move quickly here. You talk about energy security because of relation to other countries and their ability to store, provide battery materials here and the supply chains, obviously. And you noted China having 80% of the actual processing of the materials, even though they only produce some of it. Can you talk about where those mines are around the world that are actually fueling China's appetite for this to control this market in the future?
Yeah, the mines are based in places like Canada and places like the DRC, different countries in Africa, South America. And the way China does it is it goes and either owns part of the mine or takes over a company, or it does long-term contracts and supply offtakes. The one thing China does do is it goes to other countries, it puts money into the ground, and therefore it guarantees the raw materials for their own economy. And that's the state of play at the moment.
Thank you. I got a question here for Mr. Deeth at Eagle Graphics. You talked about the energy transition, the importance of graphite, which is fundamental here. But you talk about you think about where the supply of power is in Canada right now, all kinds of power, and how do you see the actual power being used to get into battery vehicles and other areas in the next, call it, decade, when we have to replace about 2/3 of Canada's power if we're going to decarbonize the way you've indicated here?
Okay, very good. I'll do my best to answer coherently here. If you're referring to power for the mine sites, it's going to be graphite in particular is no more intensive than any other mining. In fact, it's usually less intensive. Some purification methods require power. I know in the analysis for our own mine site, it's not really considered a barrier to expansion. In fact, I would characterize our constraint as mainly capital investment.
Mr. D, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Almost everything.
I'm asking about where the power will come from to be stored in the batteries that you're producing.
Okay, so to actually charge up the electric vehicles, you mean?
Correct.
Yes. Okay. The most analysis that I've seen would suggest that the incremental demand to charge vehicles is not going to be an undue strain on electrical systems. The fact of the matter is, the incremental demand will occur over a very long period of time and is a relatively small fraction of the base level demand that already exists. So I personally don't think it's going to be a limiting factor in the rollout of electric vehicles.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deeth. Thank you, Mr. McLean. Mr. May, you are next for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And first of all, thank you to all of our witnesses for taking the time to join us here today and help us with this study. You know, they say timing is everything. I had a meeting this morning with a number of key stakeholders in the automotive industry, and it was remarkable how much of that conversation crosses over to this one. They're managing some very interesting challenges right now. As you may know, COVID-19 has had a major impact on auto sales. They're down about 19% from 2020, which is the largest decrease in auto sales since 1984. But they're ramping up, and things are moving in the right direction now. The challenge is because of that downward slope. The producers of batteries, the producers of components like semiconductors, shifted. They shifted hard to things like cell phone technology and gaming systems and things like that. And there is now a very significant shortage in the auto industry of some of these pieces. So I was very pleased to hear some of the conversation in the opening statements about that issue in terms of not just taking it out of the ground, but adding value and controlling that supply chain piece. My question, first question is to Ms. Lappin. In terms of that issue, in terms of controlling that supply chain, what advantages do you think Canada has that we aren't taking advantage of right now that could help create this? Because really, we don't have this supply chain right now. How would you suggest we leverage some of our advantages to help move us in that direction?
Thank you. I think certainly one of our biggest advantages is, of course, our abundance of natural resources and our track record in ESG performance and being able to do that responsibly and meeting the needs of the folks above the ground with the minerals below. And so in that way, I think that it makes sense for us to look at attracting that value-added manufacturing to the same locations where those resources are, of course, taking into consideration things like infrastructure. Speaking from the Alberta perspective, I know that this is an opportunity that's been identified with the critical minerals like lithium that we do have, looking at going all the way to battery grade materials and then potentially that next step into the components in the cells. And that just, makes sense, right? And I think we have to prioritize the development of that part of the supply chain domestically over the export. And I think where that major lever is in the policy rollout.
So given that much of that policy is going to be provincially driven, what specifically, from a federal perspective, should we be looking at?
I think one of the things that I mentioned in my opening statement was buying local and kind of incentivizing those connections along the supply chain between Canadian companies. And so I'm wondering if there's potential tax incentives or advantages that could be rolled out that would encourage that type of economic activity at the domestic level.
In your opinion, do you think Canada has what is necessary to create this supply chain system homegrown, or do you think maybe a wider approach, maybe a North American solution, including United States and Mexico, would make more sense for us?
I think it's a combination, right? And we have the new trade agreements, the USMCA. I think there's potentially side agreements that could be made there that essentially protect Canada from being simply that raw materials producer. I would like to see Canada take advantage of our very strong performance in trade and our access to a wide market, and also try to import some of the expertise that we don't have, because I think that's clear that if we had all that expertise, we'd be doing all already. So we do need a bit of help there. Strategic partnerships can support that, but we need to do it in a way that builds capacity in Canada.
Mr. Moore, you've been nodding vigorously throughout Ms. Lavin's comments. Do you want to add to anything there?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you're going to have this electric vehicle supply chain, battery supply chain is going to evolve in two ways. One, you're going to have a base load from a global supply chain that we've already got. But then you're going to have a severe competition in three regions: domestically in China, domestically in the EU, and North America. And you need to have countrywide solutions within those regions to bring together the best of what your continent's got, because the challenge is that big. It's scale, it's low cost. And then I think the biggest advantage Canada's got really is, where's the value generation in the whole EV supply chain? Actually, the biggest leaps in value in terms of percentages are from the mine through to the cathodes and the anodes. It's not really in making batteries at scale. It's not in making those EVs yet. That's a different skill set. And that really is where, in my eyes, Canada sits or has a really strong opportunity to then link up with Detroit, and where the big automakers are making all the electric vehicles. It's just an idea.
In terms of,
sorry,
is it my time? Thank you.
Yeah, apologies, but your time
Not
is
at
up.
all. Thank you so much.
I see Mr. Bubar had his hand up too, which is unfortunate, but maybe we can get to that a little later on. Mr. Smart, over to you, sir, for 6 minutes.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Chair. I hope Madame Lepine can hear me. Is the interpreting working? Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, good. Ms. Lappin, in your presentation and in Mr. Moore's presentation, it was my impression that you're arriving at similar conclusions. In other words, that Europe and Asia are ahead of us when it comes to value-added critical metals and the development thereof. You said in your presentation that there was slow development in Canada And perhaps this was because of the initial investment costs, which were so high. Now, I know that there is a strategy that was developed by the Quebec government to support critical metals, and I know that this is not happening in Canada, but that's Canadian strategy, which ought to happen. Is this something that should include an access to cash program so as to be able to develop this stream?
I think in many ways, some of the funding that's currently available really overlaps with this initiative as well, right? Because a lot of the innovation funding available is centered on clean tech. And that's exactly what this is. This is all about a decarbonization plan for Canada. And so I think that cash should be made available strategically to folks that have been evaluated and who can be essentially have the highest chance of getting to that finish line. And in many ways, because this industry is relatively new for Canada, there's it's not just a matter, as some of the other witnesses have mentioned, of just making a raw material. It's actually making something that's a specialty chemical that requires specific expertise. And so we do need a little bit of extra cash there for technology development as well.
Et rapidement, tout à l'heure.
And briefly, in an answer, you said that we are lacking expertise in Canada. Where do we need to be getting that expertise? Is it something we have to get from abroad, or can we develop it through R&D and innovation here? What is your opinion?
My opinion is it's a combination. There's actually an abundance of work going on in our academic institutions in Canada. So I think we need to be reaching in there. We need to be looking at the National Research Council. But then we also need to be importing that expertise from the leaders in the space through strategic partnerships globally.
J'aurais peut-être.
I would have a quick question for Mr. Moores. You said that China and Europe will have 67% of the market by 2030, which is huge. Do you think, maybe I'm answering the question while I'm asking it, but I will ask the question. Do you think Canada is significantly behind in terms of critical minerals, and how can we close the gap? What are the best solutions to deal with this lag?
Yeah, Messi. The best solutions for me are building active capacity in the midstream of the supply chain and encouraging new mines to then tap into this supply chain. I mean, and when I mean that, I mean specialty chemical operations, cathode and anode operations, and then of course you have the option then to sell to the growing lithium-ion battery capacity either in the US or build your own battery plants in Canada. Then you're developing an ecosystem. I think that's what's missing, is linking every piece of this supply chain up, and also then bringing in all the university R&D work, which Canada is world leading on, especially on battery technologies. At the moment, nothing is bringing all this together.
Est-ce que monsieur...
Mr. Buber, did you want to add anything? You had raised your hand, I think.
To what Simon and Liz were just saying, this has been one of the key reasons why these supply chains have not yet been established in Canada, is there's a lack of the downstream processing facilities needed to, first of all, do the piloting work to establish an efficient flow sheet that can make the product that's needed in the market. In most cases, you have to be able to produce trial quantities, show it to your customers, and get them to verify that it will meet their required specifications. And if it doesn't, it's worth nothing. So you can't just guess at that. You've got to basically prove it. And there's been a lack of capacity for doing exactly that in Canada. Fortunately, it's starting now, and thanks to the Saskatchewan Research Council, are starting to develop more of that capacity, particularly on the rare earth side. but I think there's still a role the federal government could play here in creating some more of these demonstration scale pilot facilities for aspiring new producers to get access to be able to prove their processes.
You have about 25 seconds, Mr. Simard.
En 25 secondes.
In 25 seconds, when we talk about batteries, several people have implied that this is a polluting technology. To your knowledge, is technical knowledge sufficiently advanced to recover batteries at the end of their lives and to be able to recycle them? I don't know if anybody can answer that.
And in the coming session, we'll have to move on to Mr. Cannings for 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Simard.
Well, thank you again for all the witnesses here today. Very, very interesting conversation so far. I'm going to start with Mr. Deeth, I think, of course, because I've actually been to the Eagle Graphite mine in the beautiful Slocan Valley, and I have a little bag of graphite in my workshop downstairs that I use to smooth things out when needed. So I appreciate your testimony here, and I got the sense that you had a lot more to say in terms of what we need to do, the things that Canada could and should be doing. In particular, there was mention, I think you mentioned that China dominates the market 100% of the, I guess I'm not sure, it's not really the refining of the graphite because you would supply pure graphite. Is that making of the anodes? Is that what China dominates right now?
Thank you for the question. And I'm glad to add you to the list of customers who have qualified our product. With regards to the processing, there are multiple stages that China dominates. At some particular stages, in the case of graphite for battery anodes, the spheronizing and purifying of the graphite prior to them being introduced into anode formulation, that is 100% dominated by China. For all commercial purposes, it's 100% dominated by China. This is not a particularly difficult thing to do technically. I mean, there are always things you have to overcome with these technical things, but really China has obtained this by actively boosting their industry. You know, that they have done this intentionally. So I would suggest that a good first step is to make sure that when we produce the graphite, we do have the capability of doing things. Another step in this, one of the advantages that China has over the rest of us is that they get to play by a different set of rules. Sometimes those rules are environmental rules. Sometimes they have to do with labor and safety. It would be best, in my view, if we and our allies could ensure that there's some level of accountability for those actions. So basically leveling the playing field so that China doesn't translate a lax regulatory structure into a cost advantage at the expense of our own industries. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. And perhaps if, you know, you indicated at the end of your presentation that you did have a number of things that you could add to this. Is there anything, I just wanted to give you that extra time if you had any other steps that you think Canada should be taking that would benefit not just you and your company, but all other companies in that whole value chain for batteries or other green technologies that we're talking about here today.
All right. Yes. Thank you for that. Yes, my thoughts overall is that there's not necessarily one winning recipe, and in many cases we could take existing programs and probably adapt them just to give them a little bit more focus and perhaps some more emphasis on critical minerals supply chains. So it's going to take a lot of legwork to work this out, and it's obviously not going to be solved in this one session. However, I think everything has to be incentive driven. So those can take the form of tax incentives. They could take the form of research subsidies. sometimes it's just a case of coordinating existing subsidies and wrapping them up into a package that makes them more accessible to companies that need to do it. But I believe most of the tools are already there in the toolbox, but there has to be effort put in to just coordinating everything and making it one sensible strategic package for developing this industry. In other words, we should be doing this with intent and deliberately. We should be knowing exactly what we're aiming at before we embark on it, because that is what's going to attract investors, and it's what's going to impress the end users, such as the automakers. If they decide that we have our act together, then they may well follow suit and sign on with us.
Well, thank you. And Mr. Chair, how?
You have just over a minute, Mr. Koenig.
Okay, well, I'll turn to Ms. Lappin to follow up on what Mr. Deeth just mentioned about, I mean, I think he was talking about the same thing you were in terms of having a real plan, but I think you mentioned something on the lines of government procurement or things that the federal government could do to get some of these products, you know, through that critical stage where they need to scale up. And just if you wanted to expand on that.
Sure. I mean, there's a number of areas, of course, where the government might be looking to purchase equipment that uses lithium-ion batteries or some of the similar technology that would go into an EV. And the things that immediately come to mind are things like electrifying fleets, and so on and so forth. Even materials for defense. And so, you know, I recognize that there's certain activities that are federal versus provincial, but within the context of our net zero aspirations moving forward in Bill C-12, I think it might be interesting to tie those ambitions to helping the lithium-ion battery supply chain in Canada evolve and having government procurement incent that. Does that make sense?
That does. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cannings. Okay, so we're going into the second round, and we've only have about 15 minutes left, so we probably won't get through the whole round, but we'll start with Mr. Zimmer for 5 minutes. Yeah, I think you're still on mute, Bob.
Oh, thanks, okay. Chair. Let's try this again. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, and appreciate you appearing before our Natural Resource Committee to speak to us on the topic of critical minerals and probably more importantly, the associated value chains in Canada, how critical those are. And as those critical minerals become ever more important in the electrification of our nation and our world, Canada will be once again a world leader in their production. That said, the positive can quickly be outweighed by Canada losing control over it. The concerns around foreign takeovers of our Canadian mining sector are real for many Canadians. We all know how mining is always looking for much needed capital to match the exploration potential with the developmental potential. I see that in my northeastern BC riding. Mining is a big deal up here. It's what we do, but it's always tough to get that capital. When it happens, though, a lot of positive happens in our community. Certainly, capital is more than important; it's crucial. We saw in a recently attempted takeover of Canada's TMAC resources. And I'll just refer to a Global Mail article talking about this. Monopolizing aligns with China's year-long efforts to dominate the global supply of minerals, including its grip on the 17 rare earth elements, vital for the technology we use today and we will use tomorrow. From the solar panels, wind turbines, electric vehicles, and fast-charging batteries that could be the key to clean energy future to cutting-edge military tech and weapons. And some of you have already mentioned this and concerns about turning that potential over to communist China. My question is a simple one, and I'm assuming I know the answer, but I'm going to get into another question after that. Are you concerned about the Chinese communist government's monopolies, global dominance, etc., and other competitive nations in their potential takeovers of our Canadian operations? Anybody? Go ahead.
I see Mr. Deeth's hand up, yeah.
Yes.
What I expected. Anybody else? Okay,
Brevity is useful sometimes, Mr. Zimmer.
Exactly. Let's just move on. So no, I think we all are concerned by that, and we see in Tanco and Manitoba with cesium and the potential that's there again for us domestically, but we're basically handing that over to a country that may withhold that product to a much a world that's going to desire that product. So what can we do? I guess my question really is getting to the bottom of. We all know capital is important. We all know even foreign investment can be very important to the mining sector. And the reason why mining companies go for capital outside our borders is because they can't find it inside domestically. I'm sure most of our companies would love to be Canadian-only companies and have investors from Canada, produce products for Canada, and see that success. Whether it's developing the raw resource, the refined product. We already talked about the value. Mr. Deeth talked about how it can go from graphite can go from $1 to $5 just based on some refinement and some value adds here in Canada. What can we do so that our mining industry is domestically healthy, so that the mining sector and the related raw and refined materials aren't such at risk? And I know many of you spoke to this already, but can you be more specific? Because this is where we can change things. We can make it more competitive. We can look at what the regulations are for you. We know the regulations around mining are, I would say, nicely extreme. So maybe speak to that. What can we do in a positive way to best strengthen our industry, protect us from that foreign takeover? Let's go to Ms. Lappin, Moores, Deeth, or the Yukon Chamber. Any one of you, go ahead.
Some folks have their hand up, so I'll maybe let them go first and then I can jump.
If I may, I'd like to comment on your question on China.
Yeah.
We have to be careful not to overly generalize. Not every Chinese company is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. And I happen to know for a fact that the company that took control of Cabot Corporation and the Tanco mine in Manitoba are an example of a very entrepreneurial, publicly traded company in China that are not controlled by the Communist Party. And many companies like them are open for collaboration with Canadian companies. And because we're still at the very early stages of starting these supply chains, we need to be able to have that door open too, to be able to work sometimes with
but Mr.
companies.
Blubar, I'm
going to have to stop you there, Mr. Zimmer, unfortunately. There's 5 minutes up. So we'll move on to, and I was mistaken earlier, we have another half hour. We're not stopping at 12:15. Mr. Lefebvre, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Merci beaucoup. Very fascinating discussion today. I'm joining you from Sudbury, Ontario. So we call ourselves the mining innovation capital of the world, everything going on here, and they're non-operating mines. But just before I get into my questions, I find very interesting Mr. Zimmer's comments, because he was going down that road last week as well about takeovers. And here I am in Sudbury, and back in 2007, we had two Canadian companies, Falconbridge and Inco, that were taken over by foreign companies. It was actually conservative government at the time that allowed it. And actually the minister, Mr. Clement, actually said, "Oh, Sudbury has to do that because it's the valley of death up there, because there's no future in mining." So anyways, I just find it so 13 years later, look at how our world has changed, right? We all realize the importance of hard rock metals, hard rock minerals and metals, and the importance of that will have into our economy. And so thank you so much for joining us. There's so much that I want to talk about, and this is I like the expression "mine to sell." I think Mr. Moore, you're the one who mentioned that. And Mr. Moore, just to, because we're hearing a lot here today is that we need to put in measures, regulatory policies to say that, because I think most Canadians would agree that we need to have a made in Canada solution and a supply chain that is in Canada. Now we're trying to determine what are the gaps, what are the opportunities, what measures do we need to put in place, and that's what Mr. Zimmer was asking you. What concrete measures we need to put in place that we provided in our report and give to Parliament. Now, what are other countries other than China doing? I know Australia is also looking at this very seriously, and I know they've engaged with Canada to see how we can collaborate. But I want to know what other countries are doing in this space very quickly, and that we're not doing. Mr. Moore, do you want to start?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I would look at what the European Union just announced 2 weeks ago. $3 billion into the battery value chain, as they called it, supply chain. And that is direct federal investment into, say, a top 10 of companies in each stage of the chain: mining, chemicals, cathode, anode, battery cell. It's coherent. It's all of those companies are talking to each other through various mechanisms like the Battery Alliance. And the funding as well, and the legislation is all linked up together in one. And I think that will be a success as a result. And I don't think Canada hasn't done anything to that level yet.
Well, and thank you for that. That means we should probably get the EU representative on that file to come actually to this committee to explain their policies and what they're doing. But so what is Europe's intention of getting their minerals and their metals to do the batteries? Obviously, they have some in Europe, but not all of them, I would guess. So what are the intentions there of where are they going to be extracting or purchasing these resources?
Yeah, from lithium, for example, from countries like Australia, countries like Canada, although you don't have any lithium operations
yet. And exactly. And so with that, I'll talk about the elephant in the room here, is that if Canada says, well, you know what, we're not going to be exporting anything. No, what are these important, these critical minerals and metals? We want them to be, if they are, if we actually extract them here, we process them here, and we want the value added to be done here with the measures that we would put in place. Certainly, how would a country or a region like Europe react to that?
Well, they're also beginning to invest in their own domestic sources, but they're very early stage, not in production, and that's a long-term game as well. So they know what the long-term solution is. They've got to produce at least some minerals themselves, and that's a big step for a region like Europe.
Well, for sure, because they're not even, they're not there yet. And that's why a country like Canada, we have an abundance of that. And I think we've been a bit slow, or basically a bit indifferent, because we're happy to extract. We're happy in certain cases to process. And after that, the value added is basically sometimes shipped around the world. Mr. Deeth, really enjoyed your presentation as well. And so, because you're at the forefront of that, you're developing a mine and you're feeling this right now. And certainly you're seeing that. But I think you're as a Canadian, you want to see how can we do this all in Canada? How can we all benefit from this from coast to coast to coast? And I know you talk about some measures, and I'd like you to kind of maybe reemphasize the challenges that you're seeing, and what as a federal government we could do to really enhance that. We put in the measures to create this value, this supply chain across our country.
Okay, thank you for that. I would first, to summarize the issue, is that we can develop the capacity to extract the minerals, as you rightly point out. At the moment, there is no further processing domestically that we can sell to. So there is no value-added processor that we could sell to. So that leaves us with the choice of developing it ourselves, which we're happy to do. But like everything, it requires capitalization, and the framework is not there to encourage that capitalization, in part because a value-added processor currently has nobody then to sell on further. There are 2 or 3 stages in this, and you have to have initiatives that encourage all of those things to be put into place, so that you see the processing developing at multiple stages all at the same time, so that everybody can come online and start feeding through a system. I'm going
to have to interrupt you. I apologize, Mr. Deeth, but beyond our time, so we have to move on.
No
problem. Okay, Mr. Smart, over to you for 2.5 minutes, sir.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Very briefly, in your presentation, Mr.
Deeth, you said that we had 2 choices: whether we remain suppliers of raw material, or we take that there's a vacuum for second or third treatment or processing. You said that you had good ideas about that, but you didn't have time to summarize them. Very swiftly, I would like you to tell us what are the first measures that you would put in place to develop this file of critical minerals in Canada. So in the short term, what could be done to maybe advance or further the Canadian ecosystem for critical minerals?
I would, so in terms of concrete suggestions, I know that it takes time to set up new programs. It even takes time to thoroughly analyze them. In the way of a specific suggestion, I believe that there's a successful framework under the METSI grant program for encouraging prospecting and the actual finding of minerals. That has proven to be a very strong incentive to quickly bring investors online in order to encourage the finding of minerals. That program currently does not help us in terms of developing the secondary and tertiary processing that has to go after that. So one of the recommendations that I would have is to either expand or to redirect some of the resources dedicated to the METSI grant program into developing this sector. But I would encourage that it be very targeted. I don't think we want to be subsidizing every industrial facility that people have in mind. I think we have to decide as a country that this is a priority item. So therefore, we will encourage specific development of this type of processing. That is one solid thing. I would emphasize though that it is going to have to be a coordinated effort, and it's going to require stakeholders from all across the sector in order to have a fully coherent program that gets political buy-in almost universal. I hope that helps.
It does, and thank you. We'll have to stop there and move on. Mr. Canning's over to you, sir, for 2.5 minutes.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to turn to Mr. Bubar, who I think you finished up your presentation with talking about tailings extraction and the opportunities there. Tailings fields are scattered across Canada. They're certainly all over parts of my riding. And I'm just wondering if you could maybe expand on that, and particularly not just the opportunities, but what percentage of the production of various minerals might come from, just going through reprocessing tailings fields?
Well, there's starting to be more interest in this in the federal government. There's a national organization for abandoned mine sites. Traditionally, they've viewed them as perpetual liabilities and no-go zones, but they are starting to do some of the research on them to see what's there. So in most cases, we don't really know until you go in and do some sampling and analyze the material to see what's there and how it occurs. And then after you've done that, you can start to develop some ideas on what can be done there. So that's just getting started, actually. But I've been able to get into a few sites that have allowed us to do that. And I'm just very inspired by just how many possibilities there are now. And some major companies are starting to think about this too. You may have seen the news that was published by Rio Tinto on how they are now recovering the rare element scandium from titanium mine wastes or tailings from their operation in Quebec. So it's now starting to get thought about by other current producers too, as a means of producing these traditional minerals that are non-traditional minerals that are in the waste streams from existing operations. So it's an exciting opportunity. And as I said earlier, I think it's a matter of creating a new precedent for doing this to show everyone else how this is possible, what kind of an opportunity it represents, and then allow entrepreneurial companies like us to start evaluating them.
So then quickly, what are the barriers for that action? Is it, if you have an abandoned mine site with a lot of, costs that a lot of the times the government has taken on, especially north of 60, I know, and perhaps various provinces. But do companies like yours who want to go in there and look for these elements, do they have to assume some of those risks, or what are the barriers to actually going in and doing that analysis?
Yeah, you may have to.
Sorry,
assume.
Mr. Bibar. Sorry, we're going to have to hold that thought. Unfortunately, we do have to stay on time here. Apologies, Mr. Cannings, but move on. Mr. Lloyd, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
I'm ceding my time to Mr. McLean.
All right, Mr. McLean, you have the floor for 5
Thank
minutes.
you, Mr. Lloyd, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me first of all congratulate all the witnesses here who are remediating previous mining tailings and obviously adding value where we didn't see value before. And I'll go right to Ms. Lappin here. Ms. Lappin, thanks for adding more value to the bounty that is we're making out of the oil-soaked land up in northern Alberta with some more lithium there. But tell me, I know you came up with some solutions there as far as how we provide more financial support to the battery mining industry. But can you contrast that, if you could please, with Nemaska Lithium, who's one that we, in Quebec, where all kinds of federal government money, all kinds of provincial government money, all kinds of super flow through were expended over the last decade, all to be worth, in the end, nothing. And now the Quebec government is going to reinvest $600 million in order to try and keep it alive. So all kinds of government support goes into these, and often it doesn't get them over the line as far as integrating the value chain. How do you think the proposals you're coming up with are going to provide a different result?
Great question, Mr. McLean. Certainly, I think there's a lot of lessons that can be taken away from what has happened with Nemaska. We understand that the deposit there is strong, but we also understand that the production of battery grade materials is challenging and complex. And so, moving forward, I think we have to take away those lessons learned, and it's a strong signal from the industry that it's not just private money that's gone, public money that's gone into what I've been referring to as the new Nemaska, the refinanced Nemaska. And so, there certainly, I think, is strong support for that moving forward. But we also can't let those, failures, maybe not call it a failure, but, those things are learning opportunities, and we can take those learnings and apply them to the rest of the deposits that we have, because Nemaska is not the only lithium deposit in Canada. And, there's a lot of things that we can do to move those other deposits forward.
Thank you very much.
I can add to that too, Greg, if you'd like, for just a few seconds.
Sorry, who's that? Oh, there you are. Okay.
Don Bubar.
Actually, Don, it's okay. I got to get to some other questions here, but thank you. So I'm going to go to Mr. Hartland, please. Mr. Hartland, can you please tell us about, in contributions that Native organizations are making towards mining developments in Canada, how you see that being impacted by the Impact Assessment Act that's recently being applied to all mine developments?
Very good question. We're not familiar so much with the Impact Assessment Act here in Yukon because we have a Made in Yukon solution known as the Yukon Environmental and Socioeconomic Assessment Board. It's a tri-party agreement between the First Nations, Yukon, and federal government when it comes to environmental assessment reviews, and it's born out of the umbrella final agreement with Yukon First Nations. There's 14 settled and self-governing First Nations located within the Yukon. I should say 11 out of 14 are settled, 3 are still unsettled. And of those 3 that are unsettled, I would believe that they would be subject to potential legislation similar to this. Do you want me to speak more to YesHub, or would you like me to save you on the time?
That's good. Thank you for saving the time. One question again back to Mr. Moores. We heard earlier about the cesium mine takeover of Tanko Mines by a Chinese entity in Manitoba. Tanko Mine provides 85% of the world's cesium, and we're not pure on this because it was sold from an American company to a Chinese company. Can you, Mr. Moores, can you let us know what the effect of China having 85% of the cesium in the world has on supply chain?
That is incorrect information, Mr. McLean. That operation has essentially no recoverable cesium left there anymore. That's why Cabot sold it. Nothing left.
Okay.
It was a producer of cesium. It no longer is, except I think they're trying to recover some from the waste.
Thank you. Different from the information I had. Much appreciated.
And just quickly, my point on that is, well, cesium, we don't, that's not my speciality at Benchmark, but what I would say is there should be alarm bells if one country owns over 50% or more of any raw material. That's our metric.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can take care of that, Greg. Avalon's got a tremendous cesium resource we're waiting to try to get moving forward with.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bu. Did you want to add anything, Mr. Bubar, to the previous questions? I've still got time, Mr. Chair.
You've got 10 seconds.
Go ahead,
Mr. Have something quickly, yeah.
What specifically?
The one you wanted to opine on earlier on the Impact Assessment Act, or on the Nemaska Lithium, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I followed the Nemaska story, and the mistake they made was they took a miner's approach and tried to make it too large scale too quickly. With many of these operations, you're best to start out at a more modest scale. Make sure your process flow sheet works. Start with a small, modest amount of product into the market, and then scale it up after time. If your plant doesn't work right from day one, then you're going bankrupt if you build it too big.
All right, I'll have to stop you there. Thanks, Mr. McLean. Thanks, Mr. Bubar. Mr. Sidhu, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to witnesses for joining us today. Ms. Lappin, in your opening remarks, you mentioned challenges faced, the high volatility, competition for capital, complex nature, and policy development. Can you speak to these challenges and solutions you'd recommend?
Sure. So the volatility of prices is something that Simon referenced earlier. Certainly, speaking with my E3 metals hat on, that has been a challenge over the last 5 years, sort of weathering those changes. And then that speaks directly to access to capital. We're developing a critical minerals project in a jurisdiction in Canada that is competing for capital against areas like South America and Australia. And so, we have to make sure that our projects are just as good as those, and then instill confidence that we'll actually be able to get our project over the line. And so I think that other critical minerals developers are probably facing similar challenges with those things. And in terms of the solutions, I think what this comes down to is attracting that capital to Canada, to good Canadian projects that have been validated, and providing essentially incentives or advantages either through tax policy or any other kind of carrot that would attract that capital into Canada for Canadian projects.
Thank you for that, Ms. Lappin. I know my colleague, Mr. Lefebvre, touched on this a bit earlier in terms of what other countries are doing. Mr. Moore, you spoke about the abundance of resources here in Canada. What other countries would you say have vast supplies of critical minerals, and what lessons or what do you think we can learn from these countries here in Canada?
Certainly in the battery EV supply chain, Argentina, Chile, Australia, they would be the ones to look at. I mean, Australia, for example, has purely in the past been just raw material shipping spodumene concentrate, which is lithium, to China, and then China value adds it, but they're building the ecosystem now. So I think Australia is a good place to start to see what they're doing, certainly in WA.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Bubar, I really appreciate your positive outlook, by the way, especially going back to extract valuable critical minerals from waste left behind. Going back to the question on liability for my colleague, I'm hoping you can elaborate. I think the time did run out earlier.
Yeah, often there are closure plans in place on these closed mine sites that have financial assurance bonding requirements that often can be pretty intimidating to try to take control of if you're a small cap entrepreneurial company. And that's a circumstance that we've been trying to deal with here lately, to find a way to find some support to put behind it, because in many cases they're treating everything on the site as a liability, when in many cases it's infrastructure And if the tailings are full of valuable minerals, it's an asset, not a liability. So it's a bit silly how these numbers are actually structured at the end of the day. So there's needs a fresh look in this context to apply more realistic numbers in terms of the closure plan financial assurance bonding requirements.
Thank you for that, Mr. Bubar. And talking about our supply chains, I'm wondering if you're able to speak to the risk associated with not securing our supply chains for these commodities that we're talking about today.
Well, we got to get moving because there are other countries out there that have similar aspirations, and we can miss the boat if we don't get going here quickly. And to speak to one question that I think Mr. Deeth answered partially earlier is one of the things the federal government, I think, could do is do something similar to what the United States done, is create a stockpile of critical minerals that could then be used as a way to provide offtake commitments to aspiring new Canadian producers to buy their product. Then that gives them better access to the capital they need to build the next stage in the downstream in their project development. And by accumulating a stockpile of these critical materials, you then have a way to attract some of the other manufacturing businesses to come to Canada and take advantage of the availability of the critical materials.
Thank you, Mr. Sidhu. Mr. Patzer, over to you for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm going to start with the Battery Metals Association of Canada, so Ms. Lappin, if you don't mind. I'm just wondering, for the materials that are needed to build a battery or like a lithium battery here, so what percentage of everything that is currently needed is currently available in Canada?
That's a great question. I wish some of our colleagues from NRCan were on the call. They could probably answer more accurately than me, but I believe we have that number is either in the 80s or 90% or even 100.
Okay, so
we have almost everything.
Okay, so percentage-wise, so we do have all the materials present here in Canada. How many of them are being extracted, and we're at the point where we can start producing batteries?
I would probably defer to some of my other colleagues on the call here. Like, for example, I'll just say what I know and then pass the baton. Lithium isn't being extracted currently. I know that we have some nickel and cobalt refining in Alberta. We obviously have some graphite production. So I'll pass it over to my other colleagues and expand on that to provide you a more full answer.
Sure. If anybody else wants to expand on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm happy to quickly jump in on that. I mean, the materials to go into a battery, that if you're a battery maker, the things you would buy, it's zero. Canada doesn't produce any of it because it's specialty chemicals. It has the raw materials. It doesn't have any of the materials to go into batteries, and that's that midstream opportunity that kind of is there for Canada.
But in terms of the raw materials, we've got them all in the ground in abundance.
Okay, Mr. Deeth, did you have something you want to add to
that? I was going to say zero. So Simon and I are definitely in tune on this question.
Okay. I got a question in regards to the Kuzma deal. Just in some of the research I'm doing, and I'll just admit I'm not an expert on the deal per se either, right? So, but I just want to just ask this anyway. It indicates that lithium batteries are an essential component for the domestic industry and determines that countries have a 3-year grace period to ensure that 75% of their lithium is sourced regionally in order to avoid paying tariffs. So I'm just wondering if anybody has any comments on that. And within that 3-year timeline, if we are positioned to get going on that so that we can hit that 75% target so that we're not going to be in a position where we have to be paying tariffs.
I can't directly answer your question, unfortunately, Mr. Patzer, but what I would say is that I think the industry would benefit from additional clarity on the various different trade agreements and how they can benefit and potentially put certain projects at risk in the industry.
Okay, does anybody else have anything they want to add on that point?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just a quick answer would be to put things into perspective, and same thing, not a direct answer, but to put things in perspective, we have an abundance, as noted earlier, of materials. But if you were to go through the environmental assessment process to permit one of these mines in order to meet those demands, you're looking anywhere from 3 to 10 years.
Wow. Okay, so basically the timelines to get an approval, let's say tomorrow I wanted to start a project to get some of these materials, to get that assessment done, to get the approvals, it might be beyond that 3-year window to actually be able to do it.
In fact, I would put money and guarantee you that it'll go beyond that 3-year window here.
Wow. Okay. Is there any suggestions from your guys' experience about what it would take to help speed up the process to enable to put our country in a position where we're not so far behind everybody else who's already producing?
At the risk of harping on the same point, I believe that there's a significant advantage for a raw material supplier mark to sell to. Logistically, there's a big advantage to selling to, as a Canadian producer, if we can sell our graphite to someone in Canada or States, that's a better proposition for us than shipping material over to China to be processed, or any other overseas destination for that matter. So there is an importance of having that those value-added steps. Either we're doing them, or there's an ecosystem built to do them. From my point of view, that is probably the main driver behind how to get things going. In terms of permitting, it's very much project dependent. Our own example would be one where it's fairly easy to permit because of the specific environmental circumstances of our operation. So it will depend, but I do think that the estimate of 3 to 10 years is fairly accurate for projects in general.
Thanks, Mr. Deeth, and thanks, Mr. Patzer.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to Mr. Weiler now for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the witnesses for joining today for some very interesting discussions. My first question is to Mr. Bubar. You mentioned that you have a number of exploration projects for a number of rare earth elements. And I'm just wondering, you mentioned that demonstration projects funded by the government on different topics would help with this. But I'm wondering what would have you isolated as what is needed to bring these projects into production beyond simply going through the regulatory process?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the Saskatchewan Research Council have created a very positive precedent there for a modest scale demonstration plant to process rare earth minerals, and also a facility to do the separation part of the processing required to make the individual rare earth oxides. That's where a lot of the costs and challenges for aspiring new producers. So by getting that started, that's actually helping us with our project in the Northwest Territories, where we have an Australian company now as a partner, and they are now working with the Saskatchewan Research Council directly on getting that started. And once we do, then we see the potential there to grow production over time as we get the market established and can expand production capacity. That's the way you have to look at these things.
Great. Well, and just as a follow-up to that, apart from China, what other countries are doing this effectively right now, and what can we learn from that?
Not many. China has been way ahead of us on this all along, recognizing that they have to build out the downstream to justify the development of the upstream side. Looks like the EU are now starting to really take the reins on it over there, from what Simon was saying earlier and from what I've been witnessing.
Great. Well, maybe my next question would be to Mr. Moores. I understand that one of the ways that Europe is looking to source inputs for batteries is actually recycling batteries that are at the end of life. And I was hoping you could comment a little bit on that and what Canada could learn from that as well.
Yeah, I mean, battery recycling is a really important part of this ecosystem, not just to be responsible in closing the loop, but just to simply get rid of these batteries when at end of life. You're going to have mountains of lithium-ion batteries down the line. This is a post-2025 thing. The other key thing is, if you're recycling the battery, it doesn't necessarily mean you can use the lithium out of there, the cobalt out of there, back in a lithium-ion battery. I think that's kind of a misunderstanding. That stage of taking out lithium and using it back in a battery hasn't really been cracked yet in a consistent way. And so there's still challenges to remain. But recycling, I think that the European Union are pushing ahead with battery recycling, and actually the amount of components, recycled components used back in a battery, just because they want to set the tone on making a responsible supply chain. And I think right now that's where we stand.
Well, thanks for that clarification. And I was hoping you could maybe speak to the level of risk that's out there right now when a country like China controls, maybe not a monopoly, but such a controlling stake in a particular mineral. And when another country looks to get involved, having that ability to shift the price and oversupply the market, and how countries like Canada could respond in a situation like that.
Yeah, I think certainly in our industry, it's really about controlling the capacity in the supply chain and what I call this sway of industrial power. And I think Canada's response is simple: you build the industry, you build the competencies and the capacity for yourself. Batteries and electric vehicles, they're going to have a huge market in every continent of the world. They're replacing pretty much every car on the road. There's going to be energy storage systems. You've seen this what's happening in Texas with the snowstorms. They're going to have cities are going to build battery capacity as backup power and for more flexible grids. These are all lithium-ion batteries. And so I think the response should be you just have to build regional domestic capacity. Not say just for the country, but for the continent.
Thank you. And maybe just last question for Mr. Hartland. You mentioned some of the challenges in this, but I was hoping you could speak a little bit more to the challenges of extracting and processing critical minerals in remote or isolated or northern communities.
Very, very quickly, please.
I'll do my best. So we do have a complementary road network. However, there are access points that need to be built in order to be able to get into the most strategic areas of Yukon. We are strategically located to open water port. So Skagway is only a couple hours away from Whitehorse. So from getting it to markets and refinement is quite advantageous to where we are in relation to Alaska. And of course, we do have domestic deep water ports available to us as well too in the port of Stewart. With all that said, typically our stuff does get transported down to Trail, British Columbia, where it is, right now, there's a particular project that is extracting critical minerals out of the Keno Hill project, indium, but it doesn't get a payback for it. And I don't understand where that mineral goes. So, this is the whole downstream effects that we're talking about, where the critical minerals can be extracted and how they can be refined. There are some opportunities, but I know some people online here know more about that than I do. Hopefully that helps provide some perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Hartland. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Weiler. Okay, so we have Mr. Simard for 2.5 minutes, and then we will finish with Mr. Cannings for 2.5 minutes.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you very much. There's something that piqued my curiosity just before. I think Mr. Bubar had made a certain comment. Maybe Mr. Deeth did as well. You talked about a critical minerals stockpile that could be a solution. Well, this raises a question. In currently existing projects, what is the proportion of extracted materials that is directly exported and that is not processed and dealt with here? Do you have any statistics? This is a question for both Mr. Bubar and Madame Lapin. In other words, what proportion or what percentage of what's being extracted here? I'm just talking about critical metals. What is the percentage of what we extract that is exported directly with no processing here?
Now, and if you do, you have to ship them offshore because there is no refining capacity at the present time. But I think a lot of the problem is that's been the culture of the mining industry historically, is just make the concentrates and then ship them to somewhere else for all the downstream value added.
It's never been a part of the culture of the industry in Canada to create the value added. So it's still a learning curve for everyone to climb on this.
And to add to that, if I may, specifically with respect to Nemaska, Nemaska was going beyond the concentrate to a battery grade material. So that's something that was specifically new to Canada's mining industry. But also the direction that the lithium industry in Canada is looking to actually make battery grade materials that can meet spec of OEMs.
Speaking for our own operation, our primary off-taker is in the United States, and I would estimate that accounts for about 85% of the value, and that's unprocessed material from the concentrate level. It's actually, but that's not made for battery inputs. It's actually for an indirect steel input. There are some materials that we have been able to apply some value added to, and those are actually shipped domestically. We have a couple of customers domestically, including a graphene customer, and I would describe that as more thorough value added than even battery minerals would be.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Smart. I'll have to stop you there. Okay, Mr. Cannings, you are last in the batting order today.
Thank you, and I'll go to Mr. Bubar again, just to maybe get some more details on these really rare earth or really rare minerals, metals, things like germanium, indium, you mentioned cesium. I know Mr. Hartland mentioned indium that goes to Trail, British Columbia, in my riding for processing. The Tech smelter there, I know, is a big world producer of germanium and indium, largely, I think, from its lead zinc smelting out of the Red Dog mine in Alaska. But just wondering if you could maybe finish off by commenting on Canada's potential for these types of metals that maybe you're only producing 20 kilograms of it or something, but you become a big producer at that scale. Just where we are in Canada for those minerals.
Very, very, very early stages, frankly. And many of them with indium, it occurs often with zinc. And that's why it's recovered from the zinc cons at the Trail smelter. But it occurs at higher concentrations in other types of mineral deposits. And one of them is tin grisons, of which we have a classic example in southwestern Nova Scotia, where it is very highly enriched. There's also zinc there, but these elements can be recovered from the same resource. And as I mentioned earlier, there's also all sorts of lithium in the country rocks to the tin mineralization there. And now similar resources in Europe, in Cornwall in England, and in Czech Republic are now being looked at as opportunity to recover lithium as well as indium and tin. And tin is an electronic metal now too. Most people think of tin as tin cans, but no, it's a tech metal. It's used in renewable energy applications too. And there's no supply chain in Canada or North America actually on it.
Okay, well, I'll just leave it there, Mr. Chair. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cannings. Okay, that's unfortunately all the time we have for questions today. I want to just reiterate my thanks to all of the panel members, our witnesses. That was a very entertaining and very informative panel, I have to say. And I want to add too, is maybe the most polite panel I've ever seen, because I've never seen witnesses use the raised hand function with that frequency before. So I think maybe we should consider that as a committee and adopt that going forward. I don't know, guys, what you think, but just a thought. So again, thank you, and we appreciate it. So you can all sign off now. We have to carry on with some of our own ongoing business. So enjoy the rest of your day or evening for Mr. Moore, I guess.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
And ladies.
Yeah. Okay, so moving back then to the discussion about the motion, the amendment and whatnot. So I think where we left off is I had indicated that I am accepting the amendment as appropriate. and then we were going to see if there's any more discussion now on the amendment before we vote on it. Okay. Mr. Kennings. Mr. Kennings and then Mr. Lloyd.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, while I agree entirely with Mr. Simard about, the content of that amendment, I just think putting it in with the other motion is just, I don't think it would create a very useful study. It would be sort of a study being pulled in two directions at once, and I just think that while I agree with Mr. Simard, I'm not going to be supporting this amendment for that reason.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lloyd?
Well, it's actually quite timely, Mr. Cannings, that you brought up your concern regarding the amendment. And Monsieur Simard, I appreciate you putting forward your amendment. And I will say to the chair, I think you made the appropriate decision here. I thought it was a much larger amendment when it was originally proposed, but clearly this amendment, the size of it within this general motion is clearly acceptable. But I would like to move a sub-amendment, and I hope it will be considered friendly, that we strike the wording under a subsection C and replace it, and we do have translation for this, with C, the impact of the pipeline cancellation on Canada's contribution to meeting the world's environmental targets. So en français, l'impact de l'annulation.
The impact of the cancellation.
Ahead and skewer the French language for you all out of respect. But I just want to move that sub-amendment. I hope it will be friendly. The reason I think it's a great sub-amendment, it does address, I think, some of Mr. Canning's concerns that, it's such a broad issue, the energy transition. It could really be its own study. And what we're looking for is a very targeted study. And so we propose that the sub-amendment, say the impact of the pipeline cancellation on Canada's contribution to meeting world environmental targets, which I think will give Mr. Simard and Mr. Cannings and anyone else a great opportunity to talk about their perspective and invite witnesses to talk about their perspective, but also to keep this study very narrowly focused on the Keystone Pipeline specifically. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd, and thank you for your comment at the outset. I think it's just proof that doing things this way sometimes requires a little bit more patience, because people need to see things in front of them before they can effectively discuss it or vote on it. So on that note, could you slowly repeat what your proposed amendment is? And is this an amendment to the main motion, or is this a sub-amendment to Mr. Simard's proposed amendment, just so we're all clear?
Yes, this is a sub-amendment to Monsieur Simard's amendment.
Okay.
And so I will repeat under subsection C, the sub-amendment is as reads, the impact of the pipeline cancellation on Canada's contribution to meeting the world's environmental targets.
Okay, so that's, again, just so we're crystal clear, that's language in addition to the language proposed by Mr. Simard, or it's supposed to be in lieu of?
It is a replacement of the language by Monsieur Simard.
Okay, all right, Mr. Simard, you have your hand up.
I would like to thank the colleague for being so open, but this does not meet.
I'm hearing myself translated into English. I'm not sure why.
Is it okay now? So it does not translate the intent of the amendment. Maybe in reading the amendment, maybe it would have been better to say the energetic transition, the energetic sector transition. I had proposed this amendment because we have to reflect on the transition of the Albertan economy, amongst other things. And the end of Keystone XL is something that allows us to do that. How can we redefine the Albertan economy? We had an example when we conducted the study of the forestry sector, when we said that there is an expertise, an abundant expertise of chemists, engineers in Alberta that could be redirected towards bioeconomy. I give you this only as an example. So the amendment, such as I formulated it, was to allow, in the context of Craig's motion, a study that could respect the transition of the Albertan economy. And what Mr. Lloyd proposes, to me, does not comply with my intent.
Okay, so just I see there's some other hands up, and I will get to you. I just want to make it clear to everybody what we're doing. So what we have, Mr. Lloyd has proposed an amendment to Mr. Simard's sub-amendment. In the circumstances, I mean, we can debate Mr. Lloyd's amendment, but we are going to have to then vote on that, and then vote on Mr. Simard's sub-amendment, and then vote on the motion, just so everybody's clear where we're going here. So now I believe, Mr. Lloyd, you had your hand up before Mr. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, that is my understanding of this as well. Mr. Simard, I certainly appreciate your desire, to talk about things for the benefit of the people of Alberta that I represent. And this is a cross-Canada issue. And I feel that your proposed amendment to study the energy transition is such a large issue that it could really be the subject of a substantial study by this committee on its own. And so my effort to put this sub-amendment forward was not to take away from your desire to discuss the energy transition, but it was merely meant to focus the debate in the context of the rest of the motion, which is in discussions of the pipelines. And I certainly think that my revised wording, and I hope you will agree, that it is entirely within subject for us to call witnesses forward to talk about the energy transition in the context of the cancellation of the pipeline. And so I hope you will reconsider and support this important sub-amendment, which I feel accomplishes both our ends while keeping this debate on the narrow context. And perhaps at a later time, as this committee should deem, we will have that important study on the energy transition as you have requested. So thank you, Mr. Simard, and thank you, committee.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Mr. McLean?
And I'll be quick, and I'll add to my colleagues' comments. Mr. Simard, we could use this committee's resources very wisely by limiting a study to 6 meetings like we're doing with the critical minerals. The study that you want to tack on here could take a year in order to just scratch the surface about what we need to do in the transition. So in the interest of actually accomplishing something in a meaningful period of time, I think we have to limit the scope here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. Mr. Lloyd, you still have your hand up. I'm assuming that's just you haven't taken it down. Okay. Okay, so seeing no further interest in discussion, I think we will vote now on Mr. Lloyd. First, we will vote first on Mr. Lloyd's proposal to amend the proposed amendment. As convoluted as that sounds, that's as simple as it can be put. So, Madam Clerk, if you could please record the vote.
Absolutely. Mr. Lefebvre?
Contre.
Against.
May?
Against.
Mr. McDonald?
Nay.
Mr. Sidhu?
No.
Against.
Mr. Weiler?
Against.
Mr. Lloyd?
For.
For.
Fool.
For.
Mr. Patzer?
For.
Mr. Zimmer?
For.
Monsieur Simard.
Mr. Simard? Against?
Mr. Cannings.
Nay.
Seven nays, 4 yeas.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, so now we can proceed to continue dealing with Mr. Simard's proposed amendment. Is there any further discussion before we put that to a vote? I don't see any. Okay, so Madam Clerk, can we move to a vote on Mr. Simard's amendment, please?
Yes, certainly. Mr. Lefebvre.
Contre.
Against?
Mr. May.
Against.
Mr. McDonald.
Against.
Mr. Sadu.
Against.
Mr. Weiler.
Contre.
Against?
Lloyd.
Contre.
Against?
Plain.
Contre.
Against?
Against.
Mr. Zimmer.
Against.
Monsieur Simard.
Mr. Simard? 4.
Mr. Cannings.
Contre.
Against?
Yeas, 1 yay.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, members. Okay, so now we are back to the original text of Mr. McLean's motion as originally proposed. Is there any further discussion on that, or can we move to a vote? I see no hands raised, so, I take that back. Mr. Lloyd?
Thank you. Thank you for the recognition, Mr. Chair. I did it so late to create some suspense. Being new to this committee, this is my second meeting. I haven't had the opportunity to speak on this important motion, so I hope the chair and the committee will indulge a short intervention. The Keystone XL pipeline is so important for the people of my province of Alberta and indeed the whole country. And it is so important, especially considering the context of what we've seen in our neighbors in the United States with their oil wells being frozen over, water supplies dwindling in Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, we've seen the cost of natural gas go up from $4 per million British thermal units, and in some cases going up to $1,500 during this crisis. And this isn't just about the energy security of Canada and Alberta. This is about the energy security of North America. And I believe that given the context of this latest weather situation in the United States, that we have an opportunity to push forward with a study that will explore this cancellation, explore the consequences of it. It will give all parties an opportunity to look into this, because it's quite clear that the United States needs access to Canada's world-class energy resources. And just drilling down more into the impact on my riding, there is a company, Academy Fabricators, and in one small town of under 1,000 people, this business alone employs 300 workers. And I just got an email from them that they were bidding on an opportunity to provide pipe for the Trans Mountain Pipeline, a pipeline that is owned by the Canadian government. And they were considered for the work, and the work was given to an overseas Italian company. And I just think, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, in the context of this Keystone XL pipeline, a company in my riding, and this is companies across the country, like in Sarnia, in Saskatchewan, in lower mainland of British Columbia, we are losing thousands and thousands of jobs, good, hardworking, blue-collar jobs that put food on the table because of the decisions, yes, of our neighbors to the south, but also because of decisions that our own government is making. And without going too much on that tangent, it is just so critically important for our local economies, for our regions, that we explore what went wrong with this Keystone cancellation. What could Canada have done better? What could the government have done better to push this to a yes with the U.S. administration? And so, for the sake of the thousands of workers and across Canada and the hundreds of workers in my riding at great companies like Academy, I urge this committee to consider voting for this bill. Let's allocate a few meetings for these hundreds of workers who have been sent home without pay because they've lost their jobs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Okay, I have Mr. Sidhu and then Mr. Simard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, it's a tough situation for many families, but I know the House last week passed a motion to establish a committee to study Canada-U.S. relations, including Keystone XL, which we're meeting on Tuesday, and I think that would be the best forum for them to debate this. I mean, with all due respect, I understand. I've got a lot of family in Alberta, and I understand that it's a tough situation. But I also want to make sure that we utilize our time because I know there is another committee, Canada-U.S. Relations, that will be studying this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Sidhu. Mr. Simard.
Rapidement, je veux.
I quickly want to very quickly, I'd just like to give you some context as to why I propose this amendment. The federal government has invested $24 billion to support the oil and gas industry. Even here, we're in a context which means that today most investors are trying to pull out of a fossil fuel energy. So we've experienced something similar in the lumber industry in the 1990s and early 2000s. All kinds of paper mills shut down, and we had to tell the workers the truth. Unfortunately, paper demand was down, and we had to find a way for the pulp and paper sector to transition. It was difficult, and many workers lost their jobs. Personally, I feel that the federal government perhaps didn't do enough, but that's a whole different subject. My impression is that we have to tell the truth to workers in the oil and gas industry. We have to tell them the truth, and that means presenting solutions along the lines of the energy transition. So, it's not just shifting the problems forward. We see that the Keystone XL issue is one of the indications of this sector losing steam. Same thing with Tech Frontier. Unfortunately, I had to vote against the amendment because it doesn't deal with the real issue, which is the transition for energy workers. So unfortunately, I will vote against the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Simard. Mr.
Yeah, I haven't spoken to this yet, so I thought I'd just briefly explain my reason for I will be voting no to this motion. And I would like to support I do support the workers in Alberta, and I gave a speech at the emergency debate around Keystone XL explaining why building this pipeline, other than, Mr. Lloyd mentioned the workers that have unfortunately lost their jobs through the pipeline construction phase of this. But beyond that, there is just no indication at all that building this pipeline would solve the problems by itself of the oil industry in Canada. And I would strongly support Monsieur Simard's idea to have a study on this great transition, because that's what we need to help that's what would give the help to workers in Alberta, Saskatchewan, British Columbia. They would get that help quicker than if we tried to support and keep supporting the oil industry instead of moving towards this transition. So I feel that we would not be doing them a service by doing this, because this pipeline, were it to move ahead, it just wouldn't provide any more jobs in the oil industry in Alberta. What we need is to make that transition, and that's why I think this committee would be better placed to study those issues rather than trying to convince the American government to change its mind on this.
Thank you, Mr. Cannings. I don't see any further hands raised, so Madam Clerk, if we can put this matter to a vote, please.
Absolutely. Mr. Lefebvre.
Contre.
Mr. May.
Against.
Mr. McDonald.
Against.
Mr. Sidhu.
Against.
Mr. Weiler.
Against.
Mr. Lloyd.
In favor.
Mr. McLean.
For.
Mr. Patzer.
In favor.
Mr. Zimmer.
In favor.
Monsieur Simard.
Contre.
Mr. Cannings.
Against.
Seven nays, 4 yeas.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Motion is defeated. I want to thank everybody for their contribution to the discussion, and thank everybody for helping us have a very efficient and respectful meeting. Reminder that we're meeting again this Friday when Minister Ng will be joining us, as well as her departmental officials. So until then, stay safe and enjoy your week. Thanks very much, everybody. Meeting adjourned.